Let's talk nonfiction, baby! Hi pals, Alicia here, welcome to my channel, and if you're new here, this is the place where we talk about books. Today, I'd like to share with you a couple of nonfiction memoirs that I have read, not recently, but within the last 2 years. For the last couple of months, I've read a few really good memoirs, and I just kind of remembered how much I love nonfiction, how much I love memoirs specifically. So I kind of went through the last couple of years and found some books that I had read that were all 5-star reads. So I have 5 nonfiction stories here that specifically are memoirs, but sometimes they also kind of do something else. My favorite memoirs are the ones who, yes, definitely talk about someone's life and someone's experience, but then also kind of compare that to some sort of event and some sort of topic, or somebody who has a life experience that is different than my own, to help me learn, to help shape the world around me. So I have 5 authors here to share with you. If you've read any of these, let me know. Let me know what you thought. Also, if you know of any authors who have written a great memoir, please let me know. I want to consume it. So without further ado, let's talk about some books. So the first book that I have to share with you today is Smoke Gets in Your Eyes and Other Lessons from the Crematory by Caitlin Doughty. Caitlin Doughty is also a YouTuber. She has the YouTube channel Ask a Mortician, and like that says, Caitlin Doughty is a mortician. And her whole mandate, her whole agenda is to make death accessible to people, to make people talk about it, to make people think about it, because humans, specifically North American humans, they deny it. They hate it. They hate death. They don't want it. They don't want it. They don't want to talk about it. And that makes us so much more ill-equipped to deal with it. If you are around with and confronting and thinking about death all of the time, you become much more comfortable with it, and you become much more readily available to deal with it. So Smoke Gets in Your Eyes is specifically Caitlin Doughty's coming of age within the mortician business. It started when she was young 20s, getting her job in a crematory, and that experience. So she always tackles her stories and her work with humor, which can come across as quite grim and macabre, but she really is just trying to make death more accessible. So this is a series of kind of vignettes of sometimes funny, sometimes horrible, sometimes grim, sometimes just like, I would never have ever thought of that, about the death industry. And she also talks a lot about the death industry in this as well. So if you want to learn about the business of death, please check out Caitlin Doughty. She is not an author to be missed. Just like a quick shout out, she also has 2 other books that I also loved and have read. One is From Here to Eternity, and this is where Caitlin Doughty travels to a bunch of different places around the world that all have different cultural practices around death, and she kind of talks about their practices. She doesn't compare them, like this one's better than this one, but she just it's kind of anthropological, where she talks about how different cultures treat death. And this was extremely educational. And then also, Will My Cat Eat My Eyeballs? This is a book about death for children. So I guess she did like an Ask Me Anything or something somewhere, and kids asked a bunch of questions about death. And then she takes all of these questions seriously, even if they're silly, will my cat eat my eyeballs, and answers them in a language that is packaged for children. So I read this as an adult and still got a lot out of it and absolutely loved it. Her books are also, at least this one, are illustrated with these beautiful little illustrations. So if death is a topic that you are interested in, check out Caitlin Doughty. The next memoir that I would love to share with you is Mistakes to Run With by Yasuko Thanh. Yasuko Thanh is a Canadian writer who is writing about her experience in the sex trade as a teenager. So Yasuko Thanh grew up in Victoria, BC, which is actually where I live and where I grew up. And this is following her childhood, her experience with drugs and addiction and living on the streets and getting wrapped up in the sex trade at a very young age, at age 15, and the, you know, kind of hard, gritty, like kind of devastating life that she led. And then pulling herself out of that, her experience through education, college, and eventually becoming a writer. She's a very prolific writer. This is a very honest, brave, bold memoir that really goes to a lot of very dark places, shares a lot of real, really difficult stories to read and look at in just such a beautiful and forgiving way. She's acknowledging the mistakes that she made, but also a lot of her experiences that were entirely out of her control. She is just a very beautiful voice, a very beautiful storytelling, a very just an absolutely compelling personality. It's kind of hopeful because you know she's pulled herself out of a dark place and is in a very bright place, but has obviously experienced a life that will haunt her that will follow her for the rest of her life. I highly, highly recommend this. I'm including this one here because I feel like this is more of like a local author to me, like a local story. So I don't know how far and wide this memoir has traveled, but this is so good and absolutely, absolutely worth a read. Next up, I have Hunger by Roxane Gay. This is a memoir this is a very personal, very searing memoir of Roxane Gay's life. This is all her talking about her body, the experience of her living in her body, and this has intersecting conversations about a woman's body, about weight, about a Black body, and how when all of those, when all of those intersections meet, the lack of control you feel like you have over your body and how other people try and exert their control over one's body. This is such a personal story. So sometimes when you're reading it, you almost feel like you shouldn't be allowed to be here. You shouldn't be allowed to be reading this. But I feel like any person could read this, and even if you don't have the same experience as Roxane Gay, as a human being, you can relate and empathize with different pieces of this novel. This was very hard-hitting. This is also a very triggering read. It does have it has conversations about weight, about body dysmorphia, about depression, about racism, about misogyny. She's talking about the way that her body is and how her body has how she has shaped her own body, how her life has been framed around her body, how her body is also a protector for her. This is just a very beautiful, hard-hitting memoir, and one that I would definitely recommend. This is where I started with Roxane Gay, and I definitely want to read more, but I'm curious to see if this was the right place to start. I have many other books of hers on my shelf that I am really excited to get to after having read Hunger. The next memoir that I have to share with you is A Mind Spread Out on the Ground by Alicia Elliott. Alicia Elliott is a Tuscarora writer from the Six Nations of the Grand River, and this is an essay collection that is parsing out different issues different issues that Indigenous people in Canada face every day. There are stories in here of intergenerational trauma, oppression, racism, but as Alicia Elliott is telling these kind of grander stories of the treatment of Indigenous people in Canada. She's doing it in a very intimate way through her own perspective and through her own stories. It says here, she engages with such a wide-ranging topics of race, parenthood, love, mental illness, poverty, sexual assault, gentrification, writing and representation, and in the process makes connections both large and small between the past and present, personal and political. And so, yeah, she's telling basically the story of colonialism and the legacy of colonialism and genocide in Canada, but from a personal point of view. And this is, her writing is so beautiful, so accessible. This is definitely a memoir, a novel that is going to, it's very hard-hitting. It's meant to be, like, it's meant to be a call to action. It's meant to, you know, wake you up as a reader. There's one quote from this book that I just want to share with you. It is really powerful. Racism, for many people, seems to occupy space in very much the same way as dark matter. It forms the skeleton of our world, yet remains ultimately invisible, undetectable. This is convenient. If nothing is racism, then nothing needs to be done to address it. We can continue as usual. We can keep our eyes shut in that dark room we've created and pretend that as long as we can't see what's around us, there's nothing around us at all. Her writing is a gift. Is a gift to the world. And the last nonfiction memoir that I would love to share with you today is The Fact of a Body, a Murder and a Memoir by Alexandria Marzano-Lesnevich. This is a true crime story, but it is also a memoir. And this is one of the most disturbing and affecting books I think I have ever read. I was really messed up after having read this book, as I feel like a lot of readers would be, because it is a true crime story that is telling the story of an absolutely heinous crime. This is very on the surface, following a pedophile murderer rapist named Ricky Langley and the case of and his case and his trial, but it is more so about Alexandria Marzano-Lesnevich, who was a lawyer. I believe she was a lawyer, or she worked in a law office that was dealing with this case. So she was very heavily entrenched in this case, very heavily entrenched in this story, and was basically, you know, had to learn absolutely every detail about this case. And she tells the story, like Ricky's story, and the story of what Ricky had done and Ricky's coming of age, but through the lens of her own story and her own life, where she dealt with abuse and rape as a child. So it's somebody who has been so personally affected, not by this man specifically, but by the type of man that he was. And just really, it makes the story even more real. This is like one of the best true crime books I have ever read. But again, a very open, a very honest, a very disturbing memoir of both true crime story. You got your true crime, Ricky Langley over here and his case and everything going on there, but then also deeply rooted within Alexandria's own life and experience. And I absolutely loved this. 10 out of 10, 5 out of 5. Would recommend. And that's the same for all of these books that I have here today. So there you have it. Here are 5 memoirs, 5 nonfiction stories. I absolutely loved all of these novels. Absolute 5-star reads for all of these. Let me know if you've read any of these and what you thought. Let me know if you want to read any of these. And yeah, I love memoirs. I love nonfiction. Do you like memoirs? Are you still here? Are we still here? Are people still here? Thanks for being here, guys. You guys are the best. And until next time, I'll see you, pals.